We'll start with a hearing on the agency budgets, post-secondary education system. We'll start out with Brianna Horton, KLRD Agency Budget Analysis. Brianna, welcome committee.
Thank you. Good morning. So we are working with this very big document right here, and we're going to start on page 945. I'll give you guys a chance to get through all your stuff. So in 2022, the legislature approved a budget of $3.5 billion, including $1.1 billion from the state general fund for the post-secondary education for fiscal year 2023. There were some reappropriations. There's $10.4 million SGF monies that reappropriated from fiscal year 2022 to 23. Of those appropriated funds, $8 million is in scholarships, including $5.7 million from the Kansas Promise Act. Of the remaining appropriated funds, $1.3 million is in the University of Kansas medical programs, and $1 million is in Wichita State University Aviation Research. There's also $45.8 million in educational building funds that was reappropriated. So I'm going to skip over. There's 2 pages. They're an overview of 23 and 24, but I'm going to get into some detail on that. So I'm going to skip over to page 948 to get into fiscal year 2023. So at the top there, it says legislative approved. That's what we discussed on the first page. That's just that overview. And then we're going to move down to the agency estimate. So the agency submits a revised estimate of $3.6 billion, including $1.1 billion SGF in fiscal year 2023. This is an increase of $66.1 million or 1.9% above the approved amount from all funding sources. The expenditure increases are primarily in salaries and wages with $47.3 million, contractual services with $49.7, capital outlay, $24 million, other assistance, $13.9 million, with partially offsetting decreases in commodities, $3.6 million, and aid to local units, $57.3 million. The major increase in revenue is in restricted fees, which is $96 million. The agency request includes the following. The Board of Regents submits a $150,000 request to an SGF for supplemental request for the HEROES Act scholarship, which provides financial aid to Kansas educational institutions. In the other adjustments, it includes an all funds increase of $65.9 million, including a reduction of $30,000 SGF. The increase is reflected in restricted fee funds, which is $92.8 million, and then partially offset by reduction in federal funds expenditures. And the governor does concur with the agency's revised estimate for fiscal year 2023. I'm going to skip over to page 951 for fiscal year 2024. So for 24, the agency requests $3.8 billion, $1.2 billion SGF for fiscal year 2024. This is an increase of $189.9 million or 5.3%, including $12.6 million or 0.7% SGF above the fiscal year 2023 revised estimate. The agency requests the following. The Board of Regents requests $78.9 million for the building talent pipeline, which helps modernize campuses and is a greater investment for university infrastructure. Moving on to page 952. The Board of Regents requests $25.4 million to protect state investment and help update campus, IT, and security and infrastructure. Number 3, the Board of Regents requests an additional $700,000 for a total request of $850 for the continued investment of eligible parties to enroll in institutions of higher education for the HEROES Act scholarship. The Board of Regents requests $25 million SGF for the Kansas State 105 Building Future Program pillar. There's a joint request between Wichita State and the University of Kansas Medical Center, so each of those is $10 million, but I've combined it. So it is a $20 million request in SGF on behalf of those 2 universities to construct the Health Science Education Center in Wichita. Emporia State has a request through the Board of Regents for $1.9 million for those 3 programs listed. The Board of Regents requests $10 million for Pittsburgh State for their Emerging Technologies, Global Center for STEM and Technical Education, National Center for Micropolitan Studies, and a one-time expense match funds. The Board of Regents requests $6 million for a one-time expense for Fort Hays State. The Board of Regents requests $890,000 to maintain the support of the internal network for security improvements for Washburn on request number 9. The Board of Regents requests $13 million to maintain internal network security for the Post-Secondary Technical Education Authority. The Board of Regents requests $6.9 million for community colleges to receive funding for CTE capital outlay, and that stands for Career Technical Education. Number 12, the Board of Regents requests $35 million for continued facility renewal. The funds will be used by each university dependent on their refined capital priorities based on the Board of Regents Facilities Capital Renewal Initiative. We're going to flip over to 953 to request 13. The Board of Regents requests $10 million SGF for the purpose of demolishing obsolete buildings. Request 14, the Board of Regents requests $20 million SGF for cybersecurity and IT initiative. And then number 15, those are the all adjustments to note. So there is a decrease of $63.9 million, including a decrease of $74.2 million SGF and other adjustments. The decrease is mainly in restricted fee funds attributable to reduced revenue from enrollment. There's a decrease in $6.3 million in the Educational Building Fund, $9 million in the Digital Transformation Fund, and $13.5 million in the Federal Education Opportunity Act. So those are the requests. Now I'm going to go through the governor's recommendations. The governor recommends $3.6 billion, including $1.1 billion SGF for fiscal year 2024. For request 16, the governor partially adopts the recommendation for the building pipeline and deletes $46 million for a total enhancement of $32.9 million for fiscal year 2024. The recommendation deletes the recommendation for strategic enrollment and student recruitment initiatives, which is $8.5 million, expanded distinguished faculty program, which is $30 million, Washburn Bright Center, which is $195,000, CTE capital outlay, which is $3.8 million, and technical college salary pilot, which is $3.5 million. For number 17, the governor also partially adopts the recommendation for the agency's enhancement and deletes $3.1 million for a total enhancement of $21.7 million. The governor partially adopts for the HEROES Act scholarship the recommendation. She deletes $700,000 and to maintain the funding at $150,000, which was the same for fiscal year 2023. The governor partially adopts the agency's request for KSU 105 and deletes $20 million. The governor recommends $5 million for KSU biomanufacturing and training education. The governor does not concur with the joint requests for the University of Kansas Medical Center and Wichita State. The governor partially adopts request 21 and deletes $300,000 for a total enhancement of $1.6 million. The governor deleted $300,000 for the Profit Aquatics Research and the Outreach Center. I'm going to flip to page 954. Number 22, the governor partially adopts the recommendation and deletes $6 million for a total of $4 million. The governor recommends funding the National Center for Micropolitan Studies with $4 million. The governor does not recommend the adoption of the Fort Hays request, which is number 23. The governor partially adopts the request for number 24 for Washburn cybersecurity and deletes $440,000 for a total recommendation of $450,000 for fiscal year 2024. For number 25, the governor partially adopts this request and deletes $6.5 million with a total recommendation of $6.5 million. For number 26, the governor does not recommend the adoption of the request for the community colleges. For number 27, the governor partially adopts this request and deletes $15 million for a total recommendation of $20 million for facility renewal in fiscal year 2024. For number 28, the governor concurs with the request for continued demolition. And for number 29, the governor adopts this request and deletes $15 million for a total recommendation of $5 million for the cybersecurity initiative in fiscal year 2024. So that following page, 955, is the same thing. It's just broken out with less red numbers, less easier to look at. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip that page. And I'm going to turn your attention to page 961. So these are the scholarships under the Board of Regents. So from page 961 to 966 are listing all of the scholarships for 23 and 24, the funds that they come from, et cetera. And so in this is the HEROES Act scholarship, and the governor does recommend the $150,000 for the HERO Act scholarship. So that's detailed there. I'm going to go ahead and skip through that and get to page 970. So on that page is a breakdown of all the universities' operating budgets and their requests for 2024. It does detail for K-State Extension and for KU Medical Center. So that is there. I won't detail all of that information, but that is there. And the Board of Regents also has a request that is detailed on this page as well. So I'm going to move along and get to page 980, which is where we start capital improvements. So the agency's revised estimate for fiscal year 2023 totals $212.1 million, including $45 million SGF for capital improvements. The major capital projects include Forsyth Library renovations at Fort Hays, Morris Central renovation at ESU, and the Marcus Welcome Center at Wichita State. The remainder of the projects are rehabilitation and repair and deferred maintenance and parking projects for fiscal year 2023. And then I give you a little blurb about each of those projects right there. The governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate for capital improvements in fiscal year 2023. And then on the bottom, we get into 24. The agency's request for fiscal year 2024 totals $205.9 million, including $45 million SGF for capital improvements for fiscal year 2024. The majority of the SGF request is an enhancement to continue capital renewal and capital demolition. The major projects include renovations at the Mosier Lab at KSU Vet Med, multiple facility renovations at Emporia State, which includes the Welch Stadium, Morris Central, and King Hall Theater. I've also broken out those projects below. The governor recommends $190.9 million, including $30 million SGF for capital improvements. The recommendation includes $30 million SGF to continue capital renewal and capital demolition projects, which is a decrease of $15 million below what the agency had requested. I know that was a lot of information. I will stand for questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brianna. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Next, we'll have Blake Flanders, PhD President and CEO of the Board of Regents. Blake, welcome, committee.
Thank you, Chair Billinger. Members of the committee, appreciate Brianna running through the numbers there, and I'll just try to add some context on what the board's thought is in terms of this request. I have a short PowerPoint that you can just walk through with me that'll certainly keep me on track. And just wanted to remind the subcommittee that the board's statutory responsibility is to advocate on behalf of the entire system. So we bring over the budget request for the state, and I do want to begin by saying thank you, certainly for your support, your gracious support last year as well. We appreciate that in our post-secondary system and in higher education. We also appreciate the governor's endorsement of our work in her budget recommendations to the legislature, and this budget does align with our strategic plan. If you go to slide 4, our strategic plan is a little different than some of them in higher ed in that it's more externally focused as opposed to internally focused. When we developed this plan, we went to several communities across Kansas, and we met with 2 groups. We met with business leaders in that community, and I thank those chambers of commerce leaders that put those groups together for us. And we also met with students in high school and their parents. So there were 2 separate groups in those communities. We went across the state. We went to Dodge City, Garden City, Colby, Topeka, Pittsburgh, Wichita, Kansas City. I may be missing one, but it was several stops. It was just great to get that feedback. And 3 priorities emerged, and essentially it was, what can you do for our family and my child, and what can you do for our businesses? And then how could we lift the state's economic prosperity? And really maybe even in terms of prosperity, maybe broader than economics, because if you want health outcomes to improve in a community, increase post-secondary attainment. If you want incarceration rates to go lower, increase post-secondary attainment. If you want the number of volunteer hours to increase in a community, you'll have increased post-secondary attainment. So there's tremendous benefit besides just the income for the individual. There's tremendous benefit to communities for post-secondary attainment. But what we heard in those groups, the number one thing from the parents and families, number one was affordability. It was mentioned in almost every group as it was the number one priority in 92% of the groups, affordability. So under family, we looked at affordability, access, and success. Under business, even at that time, and I will tell you, the demand for talent from that time in 2018 has increased exponentially. Even at that time, businesses were saying we have to have more talent, and we need the innovation of our colleges and universities as well. And then, of course, we would like to lift economic prosperity. Page 6, in terms of affordability and access, I thought it might be helpful to just give a snapshot. The board sets the tuition for the state universities. Washburn has their own board of regents. They set their tuition. The community and technical colleges are coordinated, and they each have individual boards that set their tuition. But for the state universities, you can see a little graph of a trend of where we've been in terms of tuition rates. So the tuition increases, when they've even happened, when they've even occurred, have been nominal. To increase that affordability, we also are continuing to advocate for need-based financial aid. We know that's important for Kansas. We know that's important for Kansans and those individual communities. If you look at slide 7, you can see the graduates in jobs with sustaining wages. Everyone knows someone who may not have a high school diploma that became a millionaire. But your best chance of getting to the middle class or beyond is to have some post-secondary education. It's just clear, baccalaureate degrees, 86% have sustaining wages. Our certificates at a community and technical colleges can be of very high value, and you can see in a short period of time, you increase your chances as an individual to have a sustaining wage in the economy. On page 8, I wanted to just mention that we do have some headwinds. We've had declining enrollments, and I know that we've argued maybe about some things, but one thing we can't argue about is the state demographics are changing, and they're changing relatively rapidly. If you look at page 9, I want to leave with one thing to say, this is not just a COVID problem. Yes, enrollments dipped during COVID. It's not just a COVID problem. It's a long-term issue. We actually, and if you look at slide 10 and slide 11, you can see it's not uniform across the system. The institutions generally that serve more disadvantaged groups were hit harder. State universities down about 4.4%, Washburn down much more, community colleges hit the hardest, down 28.8%. Technical colleges have seen some increase. I think the clear marketing of come in, get a short-term education, go to a job is something that has really resonated with individuals. And you can see they do have a dip with COVID, and I'd say that is more COVID related. But I wanted to turn your attention to page 12 or slide 12 and look at these high school graduate projections. We've been dropping in terms of college going rate to post-secondary for the last 10 years. Really, it drops about a percentage point a year, okay? But if you look at these long-term projections in terms of high school graduates, our system has been dropping with classes not getting smaller, okay? The makeup of the class is changing to students that we haven't served as well, but the high school graduation classes so far are not appreciably smaller. But if you look at that graph now, we're entering what they term the enrollment cliff. Birth rates during the recession dropped significantly. These classes are getting smaller, and if you just take a look at some of those numbers as you start getting out into 28, 29, and 2030, you can see that, you know, we're seeing an increase typically of Hispanic students and a decrease in white students. And then overall, we're going to see a decrease in the high school classes. So on the next slide, you can see just in terms of race and ethnicity, the numbers in terms of the different groups and how the access has been for those groups to higher education. And Kansas has an increase, a sharp decrease really in the number of white students graduating from high school, an increase in the number of Hispanic students, and you can see the post-secondary participation among those two groups is significantly different. And so we've always asked, is someone college ready? And now we're asking, is our college student ready? You know, so we're preparing for a student probably with greater needs that may require some developmental education and some more assistance, but we're retooling and realigning to ensure that we can meet these talent pipeline demands. So right to our unified appropriation request, slide 15, we've looked at academic advising. Washburn has pathways to student success. We've focused on need-based aid and some micro internships. If you go to slide 16, we brought in the National Institute of Student Success from Georgia State University that's had tremendous success, and they develop playbooks for the universities, and we're really looking at how do we get better at developing centralized professional advising for students. I know that University of Kansas moved that way, saw a 3% increase in terms of retention immediately. And so advisors that are trained and can advise students on exactly what class to enter really matters. The governor endorsed the board's request to target $8.9 million towards these student success efforts. These student success efforts, we believe, in the long term, are certainly going to pay dividends for Kansans and the institutions. We have to approach enrollment from two different ends. We have to become more aggressive. We do not have enough people in Kansas to supply the talent needs. We have to become more aggressive out of state. We have to be more aggressive and give more access to individuals in state who haven't been served. And then from the other side, we need to increase retention and graduation. So that's the strategy and how we're going to improve the talent pipeline. The governor's budget includes $20 million for student financial aid, and you can see that traditional breakdown. I know there were some questions about the distribution of the Kansas Comprehensive Grant Program. I brought a handout that I'm just going to leave with you today that should be at your seat, and we can discuss that if you'd like at a later time. There's $4 million for the micro internship program, and we believe this really presents a great opportunity for students and for Kansas businesses. As we develop these internships, some students have not been able to take advantage of a full-length internship. So they might be able to do 20 hours, 30 hours, or 40 hours with a Kansas company. We know the likelihood the company can interview the student while they're working. The student can interview the company. Hopefully we make a match and we get more students into our Kansas businesses. On slide 20, you can see we're still ranked 45th in terms of state financial aid, but we did move a place up. So, you know, that's a good story. The reason Kansas got put in this situation, though, why are we so low in terms of state financial aid? It wasn't too long ago, maybe 15 to 20 years ago, that we gave much more support to institutions from the state. Tuitions were low, so their need-based aid wasn't as needed. Other states had already made the shift. So then when Kansas fundamentally changed policy and went to more of a user pay policy, we just didn't bring the student need-based aid along with that. And so now we're playing a little catch up there. On page 21, the governor also recommended a 5% adjustment in terms of inflation. You'll hear from our institutional leaders, inflation's been greater than 5%, but we're asking for that modest increase. The governor agrees with that. And then the governor recommends $11.95 million for IT infrastructure at all of the public institutions. I don't have to go into great detail on why cyber protection is so necessary in today's world. The capital renewal initiative, governor recommends $20 million for capital renewal with $10 million for additional demolition projects. And I want to just spend just a moment on capital renewal. We've done extensive studies in terms of space utilization, so we're going to have to get smaller. You'll generally hear as we get smaller, every building has a constituency, okay, but we've got to get smaller. And then, so we've got to use our space better. And then we did a study across just how much deferred maintenance do you have. What we realized is it takes about 2% of the replacement cost to maintain deferred maintenance. You don't have to look too far to know a building has no voice. So if times get tight, generally deferred maintenance is the first thing that we don't spend money on, and that's why we're in the position that we are. But as we took space offline, of that $10 million, a portion went to Washburn University. State universities had about $9.25 million. And you can see on slide 24, we took a significant amount of square footage offline. We saved $53 million. So you take that deferred maintenance offline, I'll let the individual universities talk about the tremendous savings they had from taking that kind of space offline. On page 25, I mentioned 3 specific university requests that the governor has in her budget. I won't spend time with that because you have those individuals here today that can go through that. And then Washburn University, there was an inflationary adjustment for Washburn. The community and technical colleges, governor recommended $206.2 million in ongoing state aid for the tiered and non-tiered course grant, fully funding the Excel in Career and Technical Education, which is the Senate Bill 155 program that funds those programs in a high school at the junior and senior level. That's been a great program that we've increased from about 3,500 to 3,800 students we would always serve in high school tech ed. Now we're over 12,000, sometimes over 13,000. I expect those numbers to continue to grow. And then $3.6 million for the capital outlay state aid. That concludes my testimony. I'd stand for any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Questions for Blake? Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Blake, I can't seem to find what slide it was that you spoke from, but I thought I heard you say the trends are people are not finishing school. Is that trend is going up, of people not finishing?
No, so the trend is that individuals from high school aren't entering post-secondary education. Our retention rates are actually slightly higher. We've been working really hard to increase retention and graduation, but what's happening is we've been dropping in our, and I say our system, so we're partners with our K-12 entity too. Our students are a little less college ready if you looked at ACT scores today, and fewer of them are going on to post-secondary education. Now, some of the good news is we recruit about twice as many from out of state that come here as leave, okay? There's competition everywhere, but we recruit about twice as many. We're going to have to do more. But we have to begin, we have several initiatives that work with the state board where they said everyone needs to complete the FAFSA unless they complete a waiver as they leave high school. That can really help a student to know how much aid am I going to get. We've also got the Promise Act now. So people can attend a community or technical college without exorbitant cost. So we've got to get that number turned around, but it has been dropping about a percentage point a year on entering.
But once they're in, you're not seeing not finishing that trend going up or anything like that.
So we need to improve there, but we haven't seen those numbers. We haven't seen graduation rates falling. We need to get better. We are getting better. But the reason we've brought in the National Institute of Student Success is we have to get better with populations that have traditionally had lower completion rates. And that's why we're retooling across the system.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here this morning. I was intrigued by your comment, is our college student ready? I take that as another statement that goes along, are our students ready for college?
Mm-hmm.
And are they performing at grade level while they're in high school? But what do you have to do at college to make it sure you're student ready?
So we've looked at a number of things. Some look relatively small. You better have a campus pantry. You better have a place where someone that has a food insecurity can go get a meal, no questions asked. You better have a student health center where someone can get some basic health care with not a lot of questions asked. So the board's looked at that. How are we doing there? We need, again, we used to have advising we had some great faculty advisors, but it was uneven, okay? So now the institutions are saying, we're gonna have centralized professional advisors. Another thing was we're moving to co-requisite remediation. So used to be you'd say, well, you're not ready for college algebra, okay? So, and you're 2 classes away. So you're gonna take fundamentals of math, then you're gonna take intermediate algebra, and then you're gonna get to college algebra. None of those students ever complete. So now the preferred method, the method that's research-based, is to put you in college algebra with tutoring right alongside to get you through that credit-bearing class. Now, it's difficult if you're too far back, but it still can be done. The outcomes are still better. So these are things where we've had to become more of the new student ready in order to serve that need. It's critical. It's critical for businesses. We're not going to be able to attract businesses to Kansas if we don't continue to produce a talent pipeline. It's the #1 question they always ask.
And quality, student quality.
Right.
Thank you.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Blake, thank you for your presentation. I think you've halfway answered my question. The 2 things I wrote down was, is there any actual studies of Kansas students going out of state? You know, we're wanting to keep these people at home just to understand the magnitude of what's going on there. And then the other one, the out-of-state students that come here to school and then leave the state after graduation. Mm-hmm. I kind of find those 2 things kind of interesting. And you said something about 50% in there earlier, so.
Yeah, so over the long term, we're retaining, and the retention rates are about the same at the community colleges and the technical, or at the universities. They're about 10 points higher, maybe 8 points higher at the technical colleges, because those students tend to plan to live and work in those communities. You know, it's not just, we're getting more successful bringing in out-of-state students and having them stay here. we've also got to make sure the in-state students stay here. So it's two things. And we believe, and so we can see clearinghouse data of numbers that are going out of state too. That percentage has been, now we've got some out-of-state competition, but that percentage has been relatively steady. So this college going rate isn't just impacting public community colleges or public technical colleges or public universities. It's impacting the entire system to varying degrees. But, you know, in terms of getting students to stay, I think one strategy is you've got to give them an internship or a micro internship early in their academic experience. For, you know, over 98% of our businesses in Kansas are small. So the HR director might also be the CEO. Okay. They probably don't have the staff to go out and overtly recruit students that a big name brand company might have. And so if they wait until students are in the spring semester of their junior year or the fall semester of their senior year, it's probably too late. So we need to get those students into those internships maybe as a freshman and a sophomore earlier with those Kansas companies.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at the line graph on 12, and do you think these changes are all tied to demographic changes?
The drop? Yeah, we had a drop in birth rate during the recession. So all population groups had lower birth rates. Some were lower than others, but every birth rate went down.
So if I look at white, lower birth rate, I mean, you know, because if you look at the line for white, that's the most substantial drop. Is that tied mostly to birth rate? Are you also seeing?
We should bring in a professional in this area, but just from what I've heard, so many times people are marrying at a later age. And so if you do that, you're going to have fewer children. And so then as those families get smaller, that's going to drop. Now, that isn't across all cultures, but I would tell you that all birth rates did drop some during the recession.
Just finally, so if I look at for Latino and unrepresented minorities, and those have some decline, but they've had
Not the same.
not the same. And
They've had major increases.
do you feel then that that's a population that, I think you kind of reflected that in some of your statements, that we should be targeting?
There's no question. So we have to be sure that students from underrepresented groups know that they belong at our colleges and universities. So anything, any activity, any programs, anything we can do to ensure that they belong there, because they might be the first from their family to go to post-secondary.
Thank you. Blake, one question that I have on the cybersecurity. Did you not receive some federal funding through COVID for enhancements and improvements, or?
I need to check.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Just get back to me. Thank you. Committee, any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Blake. We'll next have Richard Linton, President of K-State University. Richard, welcome committee.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thank you for your time this morning, and let me say first how honored and privileged I am to be in the state of Kansas, leading Kansas State University. I make reference to a series of handouts that I've provided. There should be 2 slides per page, and as I go through the presentation, I'll make reference to some of those slides so that you can see the specific data. The first statement I'll make is Kansas State University is the land-grant university of this state. It makes us different. That makes us unique. We have a different set of strengths and a different set of responsibilities. As you can see in the slide on the first page, we're in every single county, we're in every single community, improving the lives of people each and every day in all 105 counties. We're also represented throughout the state with research and extension farms, as well as 3 physical campuses, one in Manhattan, one in Salina, and one outside of Kansas City in Olathe. Going to page 2, in the last year, we've worked on a strategic planning exercise, which we're calling the Next Generation Land Grant. We're asking questions about the future of what higher education should be with a land grant institution. How will our student or learners be different? How can we accommodate the needs of our stakeholders and truly be relevant to the needs of what communities need? Where does research come into play where it can best help our state, where it can be a part of economic prosperity and economic growth, to be able to create conditions where industries will want to come to our state, invest in our state, and create jobs and boost our economy? So I'd like to walk through 4 elements of the Land Grant University: research, teaching, extension engagement, and also our challenges related to university facilities and our infrastructure. So on page 2 at the bottom, I want to say how much pride we have in the student experience. I don't think that there's another land grant university in the country that has a student experience that we promote at Kansas State University. This is data that comes from the Princeton Review, and you can see Kansas State University is the #1 university in the country for the best quality of life. You'll also see that we're in the top 10 for areas like health services, career services, and counseling services. And based on statements made in previous testimony this morning, we know how important these efforts are in order for us to be competitive in attracting students to the university and making them successful. The next slide on page 3 is maybe the 2 most important points of pride of Kansas State relative to our students. 97% of our students at the time of graduation have a job in place or will go to graduate school, medical school, or veterinary school, or some secondary level of education. That number is exceedingly high compared to other universities and land grants around the country. The second piece has to do with student affordability, which is likely the highest challenge in higher education. We know how important it is, and we are playing a very important role through philanthropy to be able to make the cost of overall going to college less. And so you'll see that 81% of our students receive some form of financial assistance and aid. Last year alone, our university raised $72 million, most of it in cash, not endowment, to be able to support over the next 10 years additional scholarship funding for our students. So there's 3 levels of scholarships that I wanted to just make you aware of. 2 are in-state and 1 is out-of-state. Looking at page 3 at the bottom, the Land Grant Promise, we think, is a very important scholarship offering. That is for those that are financially disadvantaged, those that are Pell eligible, a household income of less than $60,000 per year. You can see at the moment it's offered in a handful of counties that surround Manhattan, but we think it's a very important scholarship opportunity to be able to help those that are most financially disadvantaged. We've been able to help almost 1,000 students with this program. Going to page 4, at the top of the page, this is our new in-state scholarship programs, and you can see they are awarded based on success in high school and entering college, and you'll see it's a combination of grade point average and ACT or SAT. Again, we're trying to attract high-achieving students, but also lessen the burden of the cost of universities. The next slide at the bottom is a best practice that's been used around the country, initially started at the University of Arkansas, and they developed an out-of-state scholarship model to be able to attract students from out of state to be able to look and go to the University of Arkansas. And I would draw your attention to the red line on this graph, and you can see that they increased about 5,000 students over a 7 to 8 year period. As was mentioned earlier in testimony, we need to provide opportunities for in-state students, but we also need to be able to provide opportunities for out-of-state students because we simply don't have enough students to be able to fulfill the needs of all the universities in the state. So next page at the top, I'll draw your attention to the out-of-state scholarship award program that's now offered at Kansas State University, directly taken from the University of Arkansas. We've worked with them to be able to build this program out. Looking at page 5 at the bottom, this is showing some of our initial success relative to reversing the trend of declining student enrollment. And so for the first time in just about a decade last year, our student numbers increased. We were up about 1.2 to 1.3% in incoming freshmen and transfer students, and this second year data is shown on page 5 on the bottom slide. And you'll see this shows freshman admissions and freshman admits as of February the 1st this year, and you can see we're up over 10% in both applications and admits. And it has to do with the scholarship programs that are in place, better communications, and better technologies to parents and to students. The second element that's important, of course, in a land-grant university is research grant productivity. This is showing a 5-year trend in our competitive grants, and this is only one small measurement of the success of research grantsmanship. But as we think of the next generation land grant, we're thinking about how can we partner with other institutions? How can we partner with industry to be able to leverage ideas and leverage funding to be able to provide solutions that will help with economic prosperity in our state? Skipping now to page 7 at the top, there's two, I would call them historical accomplishments in the last year, never been done before at Kansas State University, that I think are true to what we'd like to become in a next generation land grant. The first one was the largest historical economic investment in the history of Manhattan, Kansas. This was a $650 million investment by a company called Scorpion Biologics. The $650 million investment will be for a human vaccine manufacturing plant located just outside of Manhattan, Kansas. But the better part of this equation is it will result in more than 500 jobs of an average salary of $80,000 or above, which is twice the average salary in Manhattan. So this is a game changer for Kansas State University and for Manhattan, Kansas, and the partnership that we have with the Technical College in Manhattan. We'd like to see more of this come our way, and that's why we're asking for funding related to biomanufacturing training. The second historical event that's happened this year is we had the largest historical outright corporate gift, a $10 million gift that was provided to our Salina campus to be able to help with capital investments and programmatic investments in aviation technology. The next slide at the bottom of page 7 has to do with our engagement activities and efforts. We started an effort last year, which is called the President Community Visits. It's the president, it's students, it's extension, it's the provost office, it's the Office of Student Life and Leadership Studies at Kansas State University that's traveling throughout the state. This year, we will capture 72 out of 105 counties and communities. These are very customized visits to be able to draw upon and celebrate our current partnerships, think about new partnerships and relationships, and an opportunity to be able to connect with parents, students, guidance counselors, and prospective students to be able to talk about the importance of higher education and a college degree. And you can see, if you look at that slide, that our next visit will be in Sedgwick County, and there our customized visit will involve visits to schools, visits to a cooperative extension, to the Leadership Center in Wichita, and also to Textron as well as PepsiCo. Looking at the next page, at the top of the page, page 8, the first slide has to do with one of our biggest challenges, which is infrastructure. You'll see that we have a $430 million challenge relative to repair and renovation with mission-critical repair and renovation needs. The average building at Kansas State University is 62 years old, and if that was a report card that I brought home when I was in the 10th or 11th grade, I'd be in a lot of trouble. You'll see that 2/3 of our grades of our buildings on campus are a C grade or below. So if you look at page 8, bottom of the page, we were very thankful for the investment that was made last year relative to demolition funds and repair and renovation funds. We were fortunate to receive from the state $3.5 million in demolition funding and $10.5 million in repair and renovation funding, which we matched 1-to-1 for a total investment of almost $25 million. That investment and other strategies that have been done through facilities and space utilization and lessening utility cost and just being smarter with the space that we have has resulted in a return of investment of over $50 million to our university. So your investment and our partnership is leading to a very strong return on investment. Next slide, page 9, top of the page is perhaps, I think, the biggest accomplishment that our university made last year. This was the challenge grant from the state on the 3-to-1 match, where we would bring in 3 times the amount of money philanthropically with a one-time match. In that program, we sought to receive $25 million, which meant that we had to raise $75 million, but we had to do it in 4 months. The College of Agriculture and the Kansas State University Foundation worked together in an unprecedented way. They raised almost $82 million in 4 months. That college hasn't raised $82 million in 12 years, and they did it in 4 months. And so I think this says a few things about Kansas State. One is we're ready to partner. We like it when we have leveraging opportunities. We were up to a tremendous challenge. But the other thing I think it talks to is look how important this was to our stakeholders. Agriculture and food systems is the #1 part of the economic engine in the state of Kansas. This is an industry that wants to see it grow in very big and meaningful ways. So if you look at the bottom of page 9, there's actually 7 buildings that are involved in this project, which is really a $208 million in total project. And this takes into account the strategy that we have: demolition, repair and renovation, and newly imagined space. So with these 7 facilities, 2 buildings will come down, 2 buildings will be renovated, and we'll have 3 new buildings, 2 new buildings for the agronomy research farm, and a new building which is in between 2 other buildings that are going to be repaired and renovated. What we're trying to do is we're trying to bring many different disciplines together to actively solve the grand global challenges of agriculture, and that's best done when you can bring faculty across multiple disciplines. Here it's food, grain, animals, and agronomy. Looking at page 10, first slide, finally, after so many years of hard work by the state of Kansas, we will have the grand opening of the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility. That'll happen later this spring, probably in the April-May timeframe, but the opportunities that this affords us to work with USDA ARS, who runs this facility, and the ability for this facility to be able to work with the vet school and the College of Agriculture to attract industry, I think there are great opportunities moving forward, especially in the biomanufacturing space. Page 10, bottom of the page, we were challenged a couple of years ago by the Kansas Board of Regents to develop an economic prosperity plan. Our economic prosperity plan is based on 4 key components and strengths of Kansas State, which are food and agriculture, biodefense, data analytics, and something which we call K-State 105. Our goal over the next 10 years from 2020 to 2030 was to be able to contribute $3 billion to the Kansas economy and create 3,000 jobs. 3 years into the project, we already have $1.7 billion projected in investment and almost 1,900 jobs, with Scorpion Biologics being the biggest component of that attraction. Without the challenge of the economic prosperity plan, we're not likely to think about ways to be able to attract companies like Scorpion Biologics. The last page in my testimony results to 2 important asks for Kansas State University. The first ask was supported by the governor's budget. This is related to biomanufacturing training and education. When Scorpion Biologics was attracted to Manhattan, Kansas, it was an effort that started in the governor's office, commerce, chambers, local communities, technical college, and Kansas State University. It was a collective effort. One of the reasons they came was the collective effort, but the other reason that they came is they're looking for education, they're looking for training, they're looking for a talent pipeline, they're looking for research collaboration, and they're looking for access to other companies. So I come from North Carolina. That's where Research Triangle Park is, and I saw the incredible value of Research Triangle Park. We're trying to build a version of Research Triangle Park, albeit around biomanufacturing, food and animal, biodefense, and this is one of the ways in which we can accomplish these goals. The second ask, which we think is very important, which has not received support in the governor's budget, but has received a lot of legislative support after its launch a few weeks ago, is K-State 105. And the general premise of K-State 105 is to take advantage of our strengths, take advantage of our cooperative extension network and relationships that we have throughout the state, and build unique partnerships in every community around the state to be able to try to stimulate business development and entrepreneurism. And much of the ask with this request is to be able to build opportunities and grants programs that can be used for business development. You know, one of the ideas could be community health. We all know that healthcare is one of the most important priorities in every single community around the state of Kansas. If we could build a network and build the right partnerships to be able to make it happen, we think we could make a big difference in what's most important to Kansas. And my last slide is just a fun slide, which I use when I stop any presentation, which is Go Cats. Thank you. I'll stand ready for questions.
Questions? Senator Petty.
Well, I said a moment ago to the chair, I was interested when you mentioned Arkansas, because I'm from the eastern edge of the state, and so I think it's kind of phenomenal. All I hear with Johnson County Schools is Arkansas. Once they started offering in-state tuition, and it's only 3 hours away, so they're just going that way.
You know, so it was a game changer for the University of Arkansas when we started to look at what kinds of approaches we could take to attract out-of-state students. I reached out to a few colleagues that I've worked with. They invited me to come down. They've given us the entire playbook. They told me, we can't take any more students. Will you take some for us? I said, I'm it. We're happy to do it. So, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, I just personally want to thank you for your good job over there. I really appreciate seeing the return on the investments. I also appreciate seeing an increase in enrollments. So thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time this morning.
Next, we'll have Rick Muma, President of Wichita State University. Rick, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, good to see you. It's great to be here today. You have two documents, this PowerPoint and a little small card that summarizes the information I'll be going over today. So as you may know, WSU aspires to be one of the nation's most premier, innovative public research universities with an urban focus. We do this by actively promoting free expression and thought and debate of ideas where all views are thoughtfully considered, which is one of the reasons why I'm here today, presenting to you to discuss where we are as a university and hear your thoughts and further shape our plans to help meet the needs of the state. When I say that Wichita State is an urban public research university, this means two things. We provide affordable access to anybody who wants to come to the university, and we help our community solve problems through research, through creative activities, and other service initiatives. And every day, we're driven by three priorities that the Board of Regents has, and those are access and affordability, making sure that we're paying attention to the talent pipeline, and increasing economic prosperity for our community and state. So let's talk about the first priority, affordability and access. First and foremost, and if you look at the second slide in the slide deck, you'll see that we're growing, both on the WSU campus and WSU Tech, and we have been for several years. This is because of many reasons. Sedgwick County is growing, and we're prioritizing citizens there. We're keeping our price point affordable, comparable to our peers. If you can see that on slide 4. And we're using need-based aid that you are giving us, along with our own institutional dollars, to invest in these students. We're helping fill the gap that they have in financial need to go to college. And you can see more about this on slides 5 and 6. From the funds that you approved last year, we increased the population of students awarded by an additional 1,300 students. But that's not near enough, as many of our students come from low-income backgrounds or first-generation students, first in the family to go to college. That's the future of the kids that graduate from high school in our area of the state. You can see on slide 6 that Kansas is at the bottom of per FTE spending in our region. Although we're very appreciative of what you have recently approved and it's helped, we need to do more to fill jobs, create more jobs in the state. And this will not only benefit Wichita State University and WSU Tech, but the rest of the state. Brings me to the second priority and related priority, and that's filling the talent pipeline. We think we're doing a good job at this. Our enrollment growth is helping to fuel this. 70% of our students are from South Central Kansas in our region, and more than 70% of our undergraduates stay in Kansas and work after they graduate. Nearly all of WSU Tech students stay in Kansas and work. But as Kansas is not a growing population, as Dr. Flanders pointed out earlier, we know we need to do more, and that's why we started recruiting students up and down the I-35 corridor. You can see on slide 7 more information about that. And we're offering in-state tuition and have expanded this initiative beyond the corridor to many millions of potential students in our region. This has been very successful for us. We've grown our student population from these areas by 200%. As new people have been coming to study in our state, they're getting connected to applied learning experiences that we're providing the moment students show up on campus with our Innovation Campus partners and others in the community. And these students, the ones that we're recruiting up and down the I-35 corridor and beyond, 50% of those are staying in the state. So these are new people moving into the state and staying. For the final priority, increasing economic prosperity for our community, we do this by solving pressing issues through research in our community. And a good example is what the National Institute for Aviation Research does on our campus, helping our aviation industry, for example, solve pressing research problems. And our students are central to this by participating in applied learning experiences alongside professionals of those businesses, agencies, and others, whoever hires our students, at the moment they show up on campus. All of this helps address local workforce needs and community issues and helps to grow the Kansas economy. So the students that we contract through our own payroll system, there's more than 8,000 of those students earning about $28 million in addition to the aid that we're able to give them. This helps our students stay in school and be successful. As a measure of our success for this priority, there's some other accomplishments that we have made over the last several years. If you go back to slide 3, you'll see a recent article in the Forbes magazine that points out that WSU is now ranked in the top 20 of all U.S. universities in engineering R&D, the only Kansas school in that ranking. It's incredible recognition for what we've been doing for many years and really another further verification that we're doing the right thing. We know what's in our research pipeline, and we will continue to rise in that ranking. In another national report from Fortune magazine, the authors point out our unique applied learning model and how that makes a difference in a student's employability in attending a university like WSU as opposed to an elite school on the East or West Coast. Again, just another example from the outside verifying what we're doing and that we're doing the right thing. This past year, we surpassed $270 million in funded research awards. A significant portion of that funding is with our industry partners, but we've also made significant gains with the Department of Defense and other federal agencies, again, helping solve some of these most pressing issues. If you look at slides 9 and 10, we have nearly 50 companies now who have a presence on our campus, bringing new applied learning opportunities for our students, faculty, and community, basically creating a digital ecosystem, not just focused on aerospace. I think that's a common belief that we're all just focused on aerospace, but also data cloud storage, smart manufacturing, criminal justice, and AI, helping to further diversify the economy as well. The Integra expansion that I know that you know about, although not on our campus, is another example how WSU and WSU Tech have contributed to their expansion plans. So a final example of how we're trying to grow the economy is our plans to develop a health science center at the core of Wichita with KU. You can see that on slide 11. And this would be a combination facility, health science center with KU School of Medicine, our College of Health Professions, KU School of Pharmacy in Wichita, and WSU Tech's health programs. This is a unique combination of disciplines coming together to form a health science center that you won't see anywhere else. Now, as a healthcare provider myself, having been trained in the largest health science center in the world, the Texas Medical Center in Houston, where MD Anderson is. Some of you have been there, you understand what that's like. And when I arrived in Wichita 27 years ago, I thought we had a gap in how we provide coordinated care to the Wichita community and the region. Every major city of our size and in any state or larger has something like this at its core. Working with KU more than 4 years now, we started planning how we could come together to make this happen. Not do it separately, as that hasn't worked, obviously, but come together. We know that working together will improve outcomes, provide more opportunities to grow the talent pipeline, and ultimately improve patient outcomes. This infrastructure is missing in South Central Kansas, and that's what we're trying to do here in Wichita, or down in Wichita. I'm in Topeka now. And provide that infrastructure that will also attract further investment in the biosciences. Several years ago, some of you may know and remember, we did a study with the members of our community. It's called the Blueprint for Regional Economic Growth, or BREG. And we identified 7 clusters: aerospace, agriculture, IT, advanced manufacturing, oil and gas, healthcare, and transportation. And as you know, and it's because of you all, we've invested heavily to maximize the impact of new technologies in these areas, except healthcare. This investment will send a very strong message to our community and state and to businesses in Wichita that we care about their healthcare, so they won't think about leaving, but also attract new businesses to the area. This is really the final step in investment that we need. We also performed a preliminary economic impacts study recently and found conservatively that this project will generate over 1,000 new jobs and provide $100 million of annual economic activity. And we've seen this as we've studied other cities, even in Kansas City, in the Kansas KU's Health Science Center. We've seen this happen in every city that we studied, in every community that's growing. Now, you all approved last year $35 million to help jumpstart this project, and we greatly appreciate that. We still have requests in Sparks jointly with KU that will be reviewed or evaluated this year, and we will need additional investment from Legislature to do this. You know, COVID has taught us that we need to do things differently. And in this post-COVID environment, which a lot of the ARPA monies were intended for, we need to take this opportunity to do this. We won't have another opportunity like this with the dollars that are available. So we really appreciate your support so far. We are in the process of the design of the facility. The Chancellor will talk more about this as well. We need your support to help move this forward. So in closing, and then if you look on slide 12, there's a table there with our return on investment slide for the university. I think we have ample evidence as an institution how we're using the resources that you're already giving us and providing affordable access, developing the talent pipeline, and helping grow the state's economy. Can't thank you enough for this. It's been very helpful for the university. We're in a really good place in all levels. We're also requesting that you strongly consider the governor's budget that will help us move forward in a number of ways in student success, but most importantly, need-based aid, which I've already demonstrated how we've been able to successfully use that. And then the final thing is the Health Sciences Center. Respectfully request that you help us support those areas. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none? Senator Fack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. You made a statement about not having another chance with the dollars. I kind of lost you in that part. Is there some federal dollars going to go into this $300 million?
Well, so we have a joint Sparks proposal with KU.
Or the Sparks money? Okay.
Yeah.
Does the city of Wichita or Sedgwick County, are they going to be putting any money in this thing?
Yeah, we've had lots of conversations with them. I think there's opportunities for not only land, but also investment in the dollars that they have, ARPA dollars that they have to help move this project forward.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate your good work. Thank you. Next, we'll have Tisa Mason, President of Fort Hays State University.
Good morning, Chair Billinger and committee members. Following 19 consecutive years of growth, Fort Hays State University has experienced a drop in enrollment over the past 3 years. I'm here today to explain why I believe that happened, and more importantly, what we're doing to reverse the trend. First, our biggest loss in enrollment is online students. This fall, 45% of our headcount decline, representing just over 500 students, was in online education. Why? Our online students, mostly over the age of 25, were severely impacted by the pandemic. We heard from our students that education had to be placed on hold while they managed the challenges of their job, family, and quarantine. This was particularly true for those in the health-related fields where work demands had to take precedence. As the country rebounded post-pandemic, we found the online market flooded. With more competition for online students, Fort Hays lost market share. What have we done to adapt? First and foremost, I want to express our gratitude for the continued investment that you make in our universities and the students we serve. Additionally, we reorganized our marketing department, creating a stronger focus on recruitment. This change has led to new technologies and strategies, widening our recruitment funnel. I'm happy to report we're seeing some positive results. This spring, we have about 150 new online students as compared to last year, and believe this puts us on a growth trajectory while we continue to establish new strategies. Our China program accounted for 43% of our overall head count decline, representing just under 500 students. We basically have no control over our China enrollments. The Ministry of Education reduced our quota, so we were able to plan for this decline. How are we adapting? We manage our expense. A decline in our China enrollment means a reduction in net revenue. It does not mean a deficit. Additionally, we continue to build international partnerships. We have active partnerships in 11 countries and 5 more partnerships in development. This fall, we served 129 international students from these 9 non-China partnerships. On-campus headcount this year accounted for 12% of our overall enrollment decline. This can be attributed to a large graduating class as well as a slightly smaller freshman class, about 22 students. Some successes we're seeing. The 13th state on-campus regional rate effective this academic year resulted in a 49% increase in undergraduates from these states. Our residence hall contracts were up about 100 beds. Our students who live on campus are positioned for greater success than those who live off campus. And our retention rate, approximately 76%, was up about 3 percentage points. In summary, this academic year, Fort Hays State, a regional university on the Western Plains, is serving close to 13,000 students on campus, online, and across the globe on our partner campuses. These students represent every county in Kansas, every branch of the military, all 50 states and 46 countries. Our impact on higher education remains very strong. This brings me to 3 forward-thinking strategies we are developing. First, our voluntary affiliation initiative. Our voluntary affiliation initiative was created to deliver streamlined educational opportunities for our students and at the same time partner with businesses and communities to meet workforce needs and help grow the economy of Western Kansas. Benefits include, for students, increased access and new pathways to their educational goals, whether it's a certificate, stackable credentials, or an associate, bachelor, or graduate degree. Also expanded opportunities for internships so students will be work-ready upon completion. For businesses, developing a powerful coalition to focus on workforce needs and providing appropriately trained workers ready to work on day one. And for Kansas, encouraging students to seek education, job opportunities, and permanence in smaller communities, which are the heart of our rural state. Second, a digital master plan. Fort Hays State is concluding work on a digital master plan designed to identify and measure student engagement and success. This data will allow us to shape our future in 3 ways: improved data-driven teaching strategies, better planning for future technology infrastructure, resources, and adaptations, and better alignment of our master plan for improved effectiveness and efficiency. And third, expanded professional development and continuing education. We are expanding our infrastructure to increase access to employee professional workforce development programs, certificates, executive education, leadership and strategy coaching, alternative and stackable credentials, credit for prior learning, and services ranging from training and consulting programs to continuing education opportunities. Let me now turn to affordability in our business plan. Fort Hays State University has the most affordable tuition among our peers. During our enrollment decline, we thoughtfully and proactively planned for a downturn while investing in strategies for a very strong future. Our balanced budget is based upon projected credit hours. In fiscal years 20, 21, and 22, we budgeted for anticipated credit reduction, and as a result, in all 3 years, we have had a positive budget carryover. And we are on pace to continue this pattern this year. We live within our means, and we use our income to gain to reinvest in new strategies for growth. In addition to our affordable tuition, we invest even deeper in the value proposition for our students. Supplementing federal, state, and private aid, we annually provide approximately $1.5 million in housing scholarships, $2.9 million in foundation scholarships, and $5.8 million in university scholarships. We continue to remain focused on being the best value in education anywhere. In fact, this is an area where we did include a specific ask, as supported by the Kansas Board of Regents Unified Ask, $6 million in one-time funding to eliminate the student fee for our Student Success Center, which is costing our students $4 per credit hour. While this item did not make it into the governor's budget, we remain committed to our focus on affordability and believe this aligns very nicely with the state's interest in both student success and debt reduction. In closing, I'd like to ask for your support in thinking about any legislative restrictions on tuition setting. Over the years, Fort Hays State University has been and will continue to be an excellent steward of our resources. We have worked intentionally to build elasticity into our tuition and fee model precisely for a time like this. As a cautionary tale, last year, after making more than $2.1 million in reductions for this fiscal year, we planned for a modest increase in tuition. This increase would have made us financially whole, provided a wage increase for our student employees, and at the same time, our students would have still saved more than $1,000 in tuition and fees as compared to students attending any other Kansas Board of Regents university or even most state comprehensive regional universities throughout the United States, even if those universities did not raise their tuition and we did. Limiting our ability to operate efficiently by freezing or capping tuition increases by across-the-board percentage rather than capping an increase at a unified dollar amount puts Fort Hays State University at a very distinct disadvantage. In closing, we also strongly ask you to support the governor's budget, and I appreciate your time today. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Frag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam President, thank you for your presentation. Last year, Fort Hays State University received a $500,000 appropriation for a new cybersecurity program. I wonder if you could just give us a quick update on that.
Thank you so much. We're very excited by the work we're doing. We have phase one. Phase one is focusing on micro internships. We are serving small and medium-sized business, mapping curriculum to student micro internships, which are project-based, not time and place-based. They're going into these businesses and they can do a variety of work from security audits, helping with cybersecurity insurance, some website development. That's going to save businesses and small communities, some who don't even understand that they are a vulnerability, even though they're the small grocery store in a small community. We have 15, this is our first semester, as this first year, we have 15 micro internships this year, and we believe we'll be able to scale up to 75 micro internships per semester. Phase 2 will be incubating tech cybersecurity businesses.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today. I appreciate your good work.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Chancellor Douglas Gerard of the University of Kansas. Welcome to committee, Chancellor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, committee members. We all appreciate the opportunity to be here with you here today. You should have a handout for myself as well, and we'll walk through some of these. One of the main reasons for this handout is it's got a lot more information in it than I'm going to have time to cover today. So I recognize time is precious, and we appreciate the opportunity. As one of America's leading research universities, we know that our mission is to educate the leaders of tomorrow to help build healthy and vibrant communities across our state, across our region, and beyond, and to really make discoveries that change the world. We also know we're doing this, as you've already heard this morning, facing some significant headwinds in higher education due to the demographic changes President Flanders outlined. And on page 4, you can see on that map, this is a projection of high school graduates between now and 2037, so 2037. And you can see that Kansas is projected to have a 10 to 20% drop in high school graduates during that period of time. That certainly is an important element, not just for institutions of higher education, but obviously for the state economy. And I think you're hearing a recurring theme from our institutions today that we believe our institutions are one of the best assets our state has for continuing to drive the economy of this state. If you go to slide 5, you can see we actually have been fairly successful over the last 10 years, despite these changes. And enrollment in higher ed has dropped every year since 2008 in the United States. And we've been able to buck those headwinds for the most part from an enrollment perspective and really have remained fairly steady with the exception of 2020 when the pandemic hit. I'm happy to say that 2022, we enrolled the second largest class of freshmen in the history of the university and the largest class in 14 years. And that has driven our makeup of our university to have the most Kansas students of any university in the state, most U.S. students of any university in the state, with all 50 states represented, and the most international students on campus of any university, with over 110 countries represented in our student population. And that continues to be the makeup of what looks like our incoming class for next year as well. And if you look at slide 6, we really have over 3,000 industry partners that we work with, that our students and faculty work with. And really that does help create that stickiness that President Flanders referred to. So in response to the question earlier, committee, the 70% of our Kansas students stay in the state after they graduate and take jobs. And on any given year, 30 to 40% of our out-of-state students stay in the state of Kansas to take a job. We know in 2020, 1,147 out-of-state students graduated from KU and took a job in Kansas. I'm not sure there's another institution or industry in the state that has imported that kind of talent in those kinds of numbers. And I think that's going to be really critical for our future. And you certainly heard all my colleagues why they're working hard to think about how we bring outside talent into our state and then help them stay and take jobs here. If you look at slide 7, we're not just trying to fill jobs, we're also trying to create jobs. And you've heard that theme here today as well. On our Innovation Park on West Campus, we have over 40 companies there. We've created over 400 jobs on site, another 200 jobs off site. Through that, about half those companies are startup companies coming out of KU Technologies and Discoveries. But really probably our biggest creation of jobs is around our research enterprise. We bring in about $400 million a year to conduct research in all fields. The vast majority of that is from the federal government, and we employ 4,000 people to conduct that research all across the state. We have operations and expenditures in 65 of the counties in the state of Kansas in our research enterprise, and that just continues to grow. We also obviously have a strong focus on workforce, and in particular healthcare workforce. If you look at slide 8, we know that We know that healthcare providers are more likely to practice where they're educated, and so we have a very strong focus on that. The School of Medicine, 85 to 90% of the students in that school are from the state of Kansas, and that's very intentional on our part. And it's not a surprise that over half the physicians in the state of Kansas come through KU, either in Kansas City or, more importantly, probably Wichita and Salina, which is where we have much more success in helping to put physicians into the western part of the state. And so we continue that focus, and we know that that's going to be critical, as President Muma said, going forward. But we also educate other kinds of students. With the Law Enforcement Training Center, we educate over 8,000 police officers every year. We educate over 8,000 firefighters and EMS personnel through our Fire and Rescue Training Institute. The Geological Survey's out across the state monitoring over 14,000 wells, helping us try and understand how we can better manage the aquifer, which we all know is becoming critically important. I did want to touch just very briefly on athletics, which is always a big topic in any room I walk into. But I wanted to share a couple of things, some things you should be really proud of. KU and K-State both have independently funded athletics departments, meaning no state dollars go into athletics. And only fewer than 10% of universities in the country can make that statement. And we also know that athletics is critically important to us. One of the reasons we're able to recruit as aggressively as we do outside the state of Kansas is because of our national brand, and the ability to be on television day in and day out really helps us do that. But those are incredible assets of our universities, and will become more importantly so as time goes on. On page 11 is just a summary of the state funding for the University of Kansas over the last decade or so. And really want to thank the legislature for the investments made in higher education in the last 2 years. And you can see that now, for the first time, we have exceeded the funding level that we had in 2008 for the first time this last year. Now, inflation adjusted, that's still about $85 million less than where we were in 2008. But that investment, even in the face of inflation, which has gone up 23% over the last 6 years. But that investment of you all in our institutions has allowed us to really hold tuition. And if you look at slide 12, we've had a total of a 1.5% tuition increase in 6 years and no increase in 4 years. So our graduates, our seniors this year, will have not seen a tuition increase in 4 years. And that's really thanks to your investment in our institution, but also being really good stewards of the money. And if you skip to slide 14 there, we can really talk about that a little bit. Over that period of time, we have had budget cuts in 12 of the 16 years. We have, last year, took another $25 million out of our base budget to really resize and readjust for our current state. And that has, through a period of several different mechanisms, also resulted in about 11, almost 12% reduction in our number of faculty across our campus as well. The exception being at the medical center, which has had double-digit growth at the medical center and our clinical faculty to try and keep up with that growth there. And lastly, I just want to echo what my colleagues have said about our support for the governor's recommendation for the budget. We appreciate them taking the Board of Regents' proposed budget and incorporating very much of that into her proposed budget, and we're very, very supportive of that. But I also would like to echo President Muma's comments about the critical nature of an investment in Wichita for our combined healthcare facility. We know that training our healthcare providers, all of our healthcare providers, in a multidisciplinary fashion is not only desired, but probably necessary at this point in time. We tend to train in silos and throw them into a hospital and say, go team, and that doesn't really play out very well. We also know that if we're going to continue to attract the best and the brightest students to our communities and then encourage them to stay, that we really need to upgrade our facilities. We have a new healthcare facility or health education facility in Kansas City. We have one in Salina. We have a 50-year-old facility in Wichita, and that is hurting us on recruitment. So a combination of this combination of programs together to really create an interdisciplinary ability for education, but also to really attract and keep the best and brightest. And as President Muma said, healthcare is the second largest segment of industry in Wichita. Is that still true, Rick? Yeah, to be able to feed that machine and really support the central and southwest part of the state is, I think, really critical going forward. So I would echo our support for that proposal as we work our way through the session. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions? Senator McGinn.
Could you speak just a little bit about the Geological Survey and the work they do? I noticed that they would like to have an increase, and I know being on the Budget Committee for water, that they haven't received an increase in that area for years and years.
It's something
think
like
that they're
16
trying
years,
to
I think, yes. It's
Grow and
absolutely
develop
true.
another program.
And it's a critical program. Water is just one component of what the Geological Survey does. They also have 160,000 drilling cores. Every well that's ever been drilled in the state of Kansas has cores held at the Geological Survey so that companies can come and research the breakdown of those cores to help understand the state. They're playing a big part in trying to understand the water crisis and how to manage through that. But they also have a whole different set of missions as well. And we know as these issues become more and more critical for the state, we really need them to be able to expand and grow the services that they provide. They're also taking point on, for commerce, on an initiative around a hydrogen hub in the state of Kansas, and we really need the Geological Survey to help lead that project as well. So we most fully support their request for an increase in budget, which doesn't come through KBOR, but is critically important for the state.
Other questions? Senator Alley.
Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about the plan for the medical facility in Wichita? A little bit more than what we have heard previously.
Sure. So the concept is really a new campus. Would be essentially a replacement campus for KU Med in Wichita, which does house medicine and pharmacy. It would allow us to expand our medicine class in time over there to a full 4-year campus. But equally important, would bring a number of different programs from from Wichita State and Wichita Tech, all of which have health-related programs, into one facility in downtown Wichita. That facility is about a 300,000 square foot, 400,000 square foot building, and really, I think all parties have agreed this is a win-win-win all the way around for everybody, and probably not a should we do it, but we have to do it. We just have to figure out how to get it done.
Thank you for that explanation.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for
and
your
thanks-
time.
Thanks for your good work. Appreciate you. Next, we'll have Heather Morgan, Executive Director, Kansas Association of Community Colleges.
Thank you.
Welcome, committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to be here today on behalf of the 19 community colleges and want to start by thanking you for the historic investment you made last year in the 2-year system for the Kansas Community and Technical Colleges. Last year was the first year in the history of our state that community and technical colleges were fully funded in the tiered and non-tiered formula. We just received this year's GAP spreadsheet 2 days ago, so we've been working together the last few days, community and technical colleges, trying to figure out what that means related to the agreement that was reached last year at the end of the legislative session related to recentering and moving forward. But I'm going to start with running through a few statistics. First, Kansas community colleges continue to be the most affordable option in the state of Kansas. Our enrollment has been down over the last few years, and we're attributing that to a couple of things. One, when the economy is good, a lot of our students are choosing to work and not obtain an advanced degree or credential. And then also our students are looking at coming and getting just a tiny bit of education and going immediately into the workforce. And so to work on those trends, we're trying to partner even more closely with business and industry. Also, thank you for the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act. That act has been tremendously successful in allowing any Kansan who wants to attend a Kansas community or technical college to be able to do so free of charge in exchange for living and working in Kansas for 2 years. We found that to be tremendously successful. There is yet another trailer bill to add a couple more things to the Promise Act this year. One would be secondary education, and the other is the word transportation, which was inadvertently omitted last session. What we're hearing from business and industry is that the quicker that we can train individuals to go directly into the workforce, that is what they're looking for. And also trying to keep our programs up to speed with the rate of technological change in industry continues to be a challenge. Our students tend to come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds and be a little bit older than university students. Our average age is 24, and 80% of our students are part-time. Many of our students are earning and learning. We are embracing the registered apprenticeship movement in the state, And a lot of our colleges are intermediaries for apprenticeships. So our students are earning a living wage while they're receiving their training. We also serve Kansas high school students through Senate Bill 155, also known as Excel and CTE. There was a little bit of a dip during the pandemic, and that program is continuing to grow with a number of high school students which are receiving technical education free of charge while they're still in high school. One of the requests we have in our budget this year is for a position we're calling a navigator. We have a lot of people who are exploring career and technical education, and some people who are receiving certificates, but what we would like to do is decrease the number of explorers and increase the number of completers. We believe a position at each community and technical college that was really focused on advising the students in a course and sequence for those technical education programs to ensure that they can complete a certificate by the time they graduate is really important. That position would also work with our students who are in dual or concurrent credit classes to make sure that they're taking the classes while they're in high school to be successful upon graduation. One of the challenges we sometimes run into in our healthcare programs is we have very bright students who think they don't need to take 4 years of math, and they have not taken math in a year, and then things in pharmacological calculations don't always go well, and we have to do some remediation. So we think that working with K-12 on that issue would be a benefit to students. Also, one of the things we are seeing is some more remediation. I think Dr. Flanders mentioned co-requisite remediation. We're taking the students where they're coming to us with whatever deficits that they come and trying to get them up to speed. We also are dealing with the demographic shifts in our state. We have 3 minority serving institutions, Seward, Dodge, and Liberal. Liberal, Dodge, and Garden City are all minority serving institutions. Allen County is also going to be offering the first early childhood education program all online in Spanish in the coming days. So we are redeveloping our programs and really looking at the changing demographics of who we serve. Also, in your packet is some evidence about our transfer students. So Kansas community colleges provide 88% of the technical education in the state of Kansas. We also have a tremendous amount of transfer students. Our transfer students tend to have a higher GPA than native university students, illustrating the job that our colleges do across the state and getting students prepared to be successful once they transfer to our state universities. The technical education that we're doing across the state has been tremendously benefited by your appropriation of ARPA funds last session, from a new agriculture building in Colby to a new CDL program in Seward to a tremendous expansion of a healthcare program in Hutchinson. All across our state, we are able to make investments with one-to-one matches and the ARPA funds to meet the needs of industry, business and industry. Our institutions have been involved in front page news projects like Panasonic, but also smaller projects back in their communities, whether it be Hilmar, Imperial Beef, or things all across the state. We also do a tremendous amount of customized training. One of the things you may not be aware of is, so for example, Johnson County Community College serves 20,000 students, 16,000 additional students are served through non-credit training, through which we get no funding through the Kansas Board of Regents budget. Also included in your packet is just some examples of what the wages are for exited and employed. We are facing headwinds in healthcare training education through the pandemic. We saw a tremendous dip in students wanting to pursue healthcare as a career. That's something we've got to work on as a state, and I know there was an interim committee really working on that and some other things. The other thing is we have to have enough money to pay our nursing educators. Community and technical colleges pay for instructors is not necessarily where it needs to be, especially in those high demand occupations where they could make 2 or 3 times the amount of money not teaching and working in business and industry. Community colleges differ from technical colleges in that we do have locally elected boards and local taxing authority. 36% of Kansas community colleges budgets come from a local property tax, and only about 20% comes from the state of Kansas. I included in my slide deck a slide just with the past 3 months. I couldn't possibly stand up here and do justice to 19 community colleges, but you can see from the headlines I included in your packet, additional CDL training, Expansion of technical education. Pratt Community College purchased a welding business in town to move their welding program out to the airport, which allowed significant expansion and also allows those students to get hands-on business experience to go out into the field and be successful. Lynn County and Fort Scott Community College have teamed up to create the Lynn County STARS program as a partnership with Crosslink Construction to learn to drive heavy equipment through simulation. It's much better to crash a backhoe or a bulldozer in the classroom than it is on the road. So we're really excited, and Crossland's excited about the ability to do that. So the city of Pittsburgh is also involved in that partnership. Whether it be east or west, north or south, our communities are working together to meet the needs of business and industry. Community college students are a little bit different in terms of the number that stay in Kansas, whether they're pursuing a technical education degree or a transfer degree. Most of our technical education students are staying here, and I included in my packet something from Neosho County Community College. You can see that their associate's degree students from the 10 Neosho County Community College, 70% stay in Kansas, which is 11% higher than system average. They're getting a certificate, 75% are staying, and if it's a short-term certificate, over 80% are staying in Kansas. Kansas community colleges have about 20% of students from out of state. Of that 20%, probably at least 10 to 15% are from states in the contiguous area. When we think about where community colleges are located, many are along the borders and really serving regional economies. And trying to make sure that the rising tide raises all ships, whether it's just across the border in Oklahoma or just across the border into Nebraska. I also included in my testimony some areas for exploration that were presented this summer to the Interim Committee on Workforce Development, really thinking about how we redo education and think about how do we most quickly get the student into the classroom, into the workforce, while not sacrificing any quality, and really thinking about how do we change the stigma about career and technical education. Finally, I'd just like to go over the governor's budget recommendation for the community colleges. And I will caveat again, the community and technical colleges are working together to go through this other spreadsheet, and we'll be coming back once we can make some sense of that. The governor, last year, the legislature, for the first time since 1978, increased capital outlay funding for community and technical colleges. 9 community colleges receive that funding, all of the technical colleges do. The governor removed $3.8 million that was inserted last year to increase capital outlay. That is absolutely critical, and we would ask that you would restore that cut in your budget. Also, the governor reduced a request for cybersecurity from $500,000 per community and technical college to $250,000. We received $0 for cybersecurity last year and have the same cybersecurity risks as the universities. Also to keep in mind is we are finding it very difficult to obtain cybersecurity insurance if you're not completely on the cloud. 2 of our institutions are experiencing over $1 million in costs to move to the cloud in order just to obtain cybersecurity insurance. I'll just touch on faculty salaries. I mentioned there are certainly inflationary factors that everyone is facing, that we are facing as well. And I'll stop there and just say that as the community colleges and technical colleges continue to work together, we hope to bring you a unified ask very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you for your work. Next, we'll have Matt Lindsay, President of the Kansas Independent College Association and Foundation. Matt, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Delighted to be before you today. My name is Matt Lindsay. I'm the president of the Kansas Independent College Association. In addition to my remarks, you all should have a fact book that looks like this that was distributed to you. Recognizing that we compressed a lot of folks in a little bit of a day, I'm not going to spend any time really talking about that book. So if you would like to ask questions later, happy to discuss them, and I hope you'll use those as a resource. I work on behalf of the 20 accredited nonprofit colleges in the state. So they're all undergraduate degree granting. They are all based in Kansas. They have their main physical campus here. That includes the state's two oldest universities, Baker University and Benedictine College. It includes the state's youngest non-proprietary school, Mid-American Nazarene in Olathe. It includes the first university in the state to admit African Americans and women, Friends University in Wichita. There's a lot of history among those 20 schools, and I'm proud to be able to speak on their behalf. Let me give you a quick note on my vocabulary. That I in KICA stands for independent. Sometimes you will hear me say nonprofit. Sometimes you will hear me even say private. Those are all fairly interchangeable for my remarks. I do not speak for any of the for-profit institutions. Folks like the University of Phoenix, Rasmussen up the street, those schools would not be included in my remarks. That's important as a distinction because in a minute I'll talk about our budget asks, but let me give you a quick 3 points of data about our enrollment and outcomes. Number one, we serve about 24,000 students. That's about 12% of the college population in the state. That's been a fairly static percentage over the last decade in terms of the total, but it is growing slightly. On our main campus, so the physical undergraduate programs, those are up 5% this year compared to last year and up almost 19% since before the pandemic. We are seeing an increasing attention and excitement about the opportunities and education that the smaller private colleges in Kansas offer, not just to Kansans, but to people everywhere. And I think that's important, that last part, because our out-of-state enrollment is growing and growing very quickly. We are in aggregate close to 50% out of state. And in your book, the second to last page, you will find a list of all of our schools and how many what their percentage of enrollment is out of state. And you will find that some of them, it's more than 60 or even 70% students who are now coming from out of state. We like that because those students, we have found, tend to stay in Kansas when they finish. So we're working on some harder research. We suspect about a third, a little more than a third of those students stay here after they finish, which is growing a lot of especially smaller communities in Kansas. You can't go to places like Hillsborough or Sterling or Lindsborg and not find a whole bunch of people who came here to go to college at one of the KICA institutions and then discovered they loved Kansas and didn't leave. And they started businesses, they started families, and they are thriving in our communities, and we're proud of that outcome. That's enrollment. I will note on diversity, because we've had a couple of conversations before. We are increasingly diverse. And in fact, KICA institutions have seen a 13 percentage point increase in the percentage of minority students in the last decade. Donnelly College in Kansas City, Kansas, has been named the most diverse college in the Midwest by U.S. News for the last 4 years in a row. And Newman University in Wichita has just become the first four-year institution in Kansas to be named by the federal government as a Hispanic serving institution. So we're really, really invested in serving the new types of students that we're seeing in Kansas. What do we do with them? Well, we award about 19% of the bachelor's degrees and 20% of the master's degrees every year in Kansas. It's about 5,800 degrees all told. And those are particularly concentrated in a number of fields. I mean, we're comprehensive institutions for the most part, but we overperform. We punch above our weight in things like nursing. 37% of the bachelor's degrees in nursing last year came out of KICA institutions. We do a lot with law enforcement. A third of all the law enforcement and emergency management degrees came from our institutions. Mental health is a place we are very heavily invested, both in clinical and family counseling, as well as in social work. There are places that you would think, and of course in teaching, 19%, usually I think it's 17% this last year, came out of of the teachers in the state, came out of our schools. These are helping careers. Our schools, our missions tend to lean into the education of people who are going to go out and serve their community. That's 2 points. A third one is on our economic impact. We just concluded an economic impact study with an outside private firm. I'm somewhat of an economist by trade, and so I'm skeptical of a lot of those reports, and so we pushed the firm to be very rigorous in their study. And they came back with an analysis that said private colleges in Kansas provide $1.1 billion in economic impact to the state every year. For context, the beef and lamb industry in Kansas, the value of those exports is $1 billion a year. So private colleges, their economic impact is equivalent to the export value of the beef and lamb in Kansas each year. That's a extremely powerful testament to what we do. And I'm proud of our schools for the work they put into serving their communities. In your budget, there are a couple of priorities we'd like to see you address. Obviously, we are independent colleges, and so we don't get a lot of direct operational aid. Most of the places we touch the budget are in student aid. Our students qualify for a number of pieces of the student scholarships and grants that the Board of Regents administers. The biggest one of those is called the Kansas Comprehensive Grant. So that is a bit of history. In 1998, the legislature smushed 3 different grants together. A grant that was for Regents universities, a grant for Washburn, and grants for the private colleges into one big grant called the Kansas Comprehensive Grant, designed to serve Kansans with need to go to college, whether they were going to public or private universities. So that's existed since fiscal year 99, and it's been extremely effective. For our students, students are about 13 percentage points more likely to graduate if they receive that grant than their peers, so it works. Historically, we split that evenly with the public universities. So it's not in statute, that is not required, but we'll call it a gentleman's agreement between the two sectors was we would take that small piece of what the state provides in higher ed and split it evenly between the two sectors to make sure all students were served, and that's been how it went. Last year, you all did something amazing. We were delighted. You took a program that was about $16 million a year and added $19 million to it. That's the largest increase that grant has ever received. We had always been worried about it not serving enough students. We had more students with need than we could support. And you all did something great in adding to that program and asked us to match it 1-to-1. We were pleased as could be. Unfortunately for us, because it's not statutorily required, the regents who administer the grant decided to change the allocation formula between the public and private sectors. And so the new approach leaves that at about a 64 to 36% division between the public and the private institutions. To put in real dollar terms, had we stayed at 50-50, or approximately there, our students, the private college students, would have qualified for about $4.8 million more in need-based aid than the state was able to provide under this new rule that the regents put forth. We think that's not the way that you all intended it. We hope that that was our correct interpretation of how you all had always looked at that grant. Of the $800 million in SGF that you all provide higher ed every year, private college students get about 1% of what you spend. So we were not thinking we were asking for too much by saying let's split that 50-50. And we hope and our ask is that you explicitly move that program to a 50-50 division in the future and make that legislative intent clear. The second item I'd just like to bring up is around engineering, and I think some of you have heard me talk about this in years past. The state has a thing called the University Engineering Initiative. It provides $3.5 million each to Wichita State, KU, and K-State to provide and support growth of engineering, to educate more engineers for Kansas. And it's cooperatively administered by Commerce and Regents. We don't just have 3 accredited engineering programs in the state. Benedictine College is accredited in mechanical, civil, chemical, and electrical engineering. And in fact, Benedictine College is the only university in the US we know of that requires their graduates to pass the FE, the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, in order to graduate. There are other schools that require the exam to be taken. Only Benedictine requires their students to pass that exam, which is essentially the predicate to being able to work as a professional engineer. Benedictine is, of course, smaller than the Regents University, so we would not expect $3.5 million for Benedictine. But we do believe that if the intent of that program is a workforce development program, the state is overlooking an important tool in addressing that workforce need, which is the role that private colleges can provide. We're excited Friends University is going to receive their accreditation from ABET this summer. And that will be another private college with engineering. And so we would ask that you all seek to add some funding to the University Engineering Initiative, preferably from SGF rather than ELARF, to support private college engineers and scholarships, internships, and trying to make sure we have more engineers in the state. The reason I emphasize SGF versus ELARF, while some of my colleges, my Catholic college presidents often laugh, they're perfectly comfortable with gambling. They have bingo every weekend, things like that. I have some of my other schools that are a little less comfortable with gambling money. So if we can find to fund that through SGF, that would be delightful. With that, I think I'll close and be glad to stand for questions of any kind.
Thank you, Matt. Questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, thank you for your presentation. How many engineers stay in Kansas?
Of Benedictines, it's about, right now, it's about 80% of their graduating class the last 3 years has stayed in Kansas.
I want to pass along congratulations for the $500 million McPherson College got. That was an awesome deal. Thank you.
It is a lot of money, and I know they're very grateful to the anonymous donor who has made that donation and made it unrestricted. So it is not, hey, we want you to build a football stadium with this money. It is support students, and McPherson has said we're going to spend it to help make sure students graduate debt-free. We're going to invest in rural healthcare delivery programs, and we're going to look at engineering and programs in mobility as 3 of the big priorities they're using some of those funds for.
Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 80% seems awful high for Benedictine being right across the to Missouri and Nebraska. So that is a hard number.
It is a hard number.
It's interesting. I was just curious if your board has ever talked about wanting to be a public university, because these numbers are getting closer and closer to what we give our public colleges. Private, and I assume you chose to be private.
We did. I would probably push back a little there as we get plenty of money from various, we sign NSF grants to our schools. We get VA money for our schools. And in state, we get nursing grant money and always have. So there's never really been a true delineation in our history of what is 100% public or private. I'd also say that over the years, as the state has required the regents to stand more on their own tuition legs and financial aid, we're not asking them to stop calling themselves public universities, as they've started to look more like us.
Yeah, but they're required to conform to any statute or rules that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we have the opportunity to govern you at all. Is that correct?
No, I would say that's not correct. There are plenty of places where we have to follow plenty of regulations.
Right. It's just grown. I mean, when I first got here, you were just happy to have the comprehensive grant. Now, there's a lot of ass in here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Alley. Senator Petty.
This is kind of a follow-up on the engineering at Benedictine. How long have they had their program in place?
They have been, the first of those 4 was accredited 5 years ago. And the last of them was accredited, the last of those 4 got their accreditation last summer.
So we're actually talking about graduation class of 1.
No, they were already having students. So their first graduating class came out 5 years ago.
Their first, they graduated a class the first year they were.
Indeed, they were partnered with Creighton University to start to help them get launched.
All right.
And then 5 years ago, they were able to get accreditation entirely for Benedictine on its own 2 feet.
Senator Alley, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The overall number of graduates that you had, did I hear you say about 80 of them stay in the state?
For Benedictine's engineering program?
Well, of your private, let's go back to your private colleges, your 20, how many of those stay in the state?
So we awarded about 5,800 credentials last year. I don't know if I have exact numbers on how many of the state, we have some evidence that the out-of-state students, about 1/3 of those stay. And that's about half of those students, and about 1/3 of those students we know stay. As you might imagine, and I'm sure all of my peers back here would tell you, alumni don't like to fill out too many surveys to tell us where they are, because they know we're going to ask them for money right after that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Senator McGinn.
How big is the graduation classes for the engineering? Benedictine?
I think the last year was close to 40.
40 people? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Ken Hush, president of Emporia State University. Ken, welcome committee.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. I'll try not to also provide duplication with the previous comments. A lot of things were said. But first of all, on behalf of Emporia State University, our communities, and as a Kansas taxpayer, thanks for all of what you do. Secondly, appreciate all of your past funding and the initiatives that you've supported. Next, appreciate and thank you in advance for your consideration for our initiatives and our system-wide higher education budget recommendations for next year, as well as our specific, in the governor's proposal, a couple of the budget recommendations there, and also consideration for bonding authority for consolidation of our nursing programs and student wellness. That was a one building off campus and 3 additional buildings where we're raising on the central campus and taking it down, 4 building decision into 1. And lastly, I just would like to thank Blake Flanders and the rest of the Board of Regents for being great partners throughout the last year and your leadership. You have a small presentation, again, avoiding duplication. Who is Emporia State? You've heard it. Our strike zone programs, we have tried to identify and do a better job of those. Those are listed. 72% of our undergrad programs are represented by teaching, business, cybersecurity, and nursing and health sciences. That is our strike zone. We have tried to provide focus on that and narrow up our decisions for that. As you can see in the gold circles, those are our graduate programs, which are very similar with the addition of our library sciences. It was also mentioned, previous university, 96% of Emporia State graduates are career locked. They have jobs and or are continuing on for higher education. Taking that one step further, 78% of our alumni base stay here in Kansas. That equates to better return on investments for the state dollars contributed via taxes, et cetera. That also flows into our strike zone areas are also workforce shortages in the state. Again, those are just teachers, cybersecurity, and nurses, which are narrowed up. That's who we are. Last year, you might, on page 4, it's called Commitments Made. A few of you may recognize this page from last year. This is what we gave you. I was an interim role for a few months at the time, but this is what we had in mind. The Emporia State model was going to be, we were future focused and hey, are we doing things correctly and optimizing? Okay, that was the first assumption that we made. We were going to continue to do what we do well, educate students in the strike zone areas and graduate them, feed them into the workforce, particularly the shortages of today. I think I used the reference to the supply demand in various areas around the state and nationwide are just out of whack. Workforce is one of those. But at the same time, and uniquely, we told you we're going to step back and do a self-assessment from one end of the campus to the other. We did that. We were going to take, not only through the analysis period, we were going to look at ourselves and as a group and a team type of oriented, we were going to apply all the types of data we can, and as a group, we were going to try to make decisions that make the most sense from an optimization standpoint and the best return on investment. Strategic actions, we mentioned that we were going to take those as we saw them, and we were going to prioritize, we were going to do things differently in leadership. 80% of our leadership across the university has been either elevated or changed. Labor, we're going to look at that, program mix, relationships. That's what we told you last year, and we're here to give you a brief report on how we did. Again, next page, reimagine ourselves. Those are just a couple things. I think we mentioned leadership, the team approach, the data-driven, financial stewardship. Efficiency, accountability, partnerships, and stakeholders, we felt we needed to do a better job. That was foremost and front and center with how we looked at it for this last year. The next page of discovery. So during this last year, we've come across various things. We've looked at our historical data. We've looked at where the dollars have been and the decisions made and, frankly, inaction that has been made. This is just one small example. What it basically says, we were supposed to tear down per a master plan in 2014 a building. We chose not to. It would have cost us $300,000 to do that. Today, it costs us $1 million. Okay? In addition, we added some other expenses. The ongoing expenses there are $3.2 million. That doesn't seem like a lot compared to a lot of the numbers that are being discussed today. But we also kicked down the road deferred maintenance of the building. So it was an economic decision of roughly $8 million. What does that mean to us? We're fortunate. You reward us through about $37 million of state general funding. That's 22% of our state general funding amount. That's a substantial decision from a financial standpoint that, frankly, we should have done differently. We're doing that now, this building. The next page of discovery, what have we learned about ourselves? We can be better. We looked in the mirror. We told you we were going to reassess ourselves. We looked in the mirror. We knew we could be better. We didn't like what we saw in some areas, and you're hearing various words potentially as it pertains to us on transformation, changes, consolidation, return on investment, reinvestments. Yes, that is us, and that's what we're doing, and we will continue to do, again, through the various partnerships that we have. The right side of that page in the gray columns there. Through the decisions in the analysis that we could have taken different decisions financially over the last several years, as you can see from those historicals, we took decisions this year that actually put a stop loss on things on an ongoing basis, okay? It's not just reductions, it's a stop loss. And as you can see, the gray column there is roughly $50 million that we will be phasing out, and so ourselves and the state of Kansas will not have to look at those further. The next page is a deferred maintenance liability. It's been mentioned that the various universities are taking action in this. I think we're proud of our accomplishments. We needed to do this. We're playing catch up. There's no doubt about it. I mentioned the one building before. We've sold another building that was off campus. We've taken decisions on 6 buildings, okay? And you can see the action summary there on the impacts from a percentage basis, 22% from an overall building reduction and number of buildings with the 6. The space optimization is 18%, 20% on deferred maintenance. We will be, with the future support, we appreciate what you've done last year on financing for raising of buildings. We'll continue to move in that direction and make the right decisions. It helps us short-term from a cash flow as well as mid to long-term strategically. Specifically, I mentioned the nursing building. That is a strike zone area for us. Again, we're taking 4 buildings and consolidating to one new one. That is not the total representative of that amount because we've received additional fundings and we'll continue to pursue that. So it's an ask of up to $15 million. We look at ourselves, we're fortunate to be within the K-Board system of the 6 universities. We're not the research and development universities, the phenomenal strategies and accomplishments that the others have had and have been mentioned today. We're not that. We are a workforce provider. We have an effect of up to $400 million of financial impact to our various local communities, more than that for the state overall. What the funds that you receive or we receive from you are vital. And it's as mentioned earlier through the statistics with our graduation rates, everything, with the financial decisions and the savings that we're creating, we feel that we're a phenomenal investment on a go-forward basis. We'll continue to make changes. We've had, we've had a lot of decisions that, again, could have been made over the last decade plus that were not for various reasons. We're going to continue to strive for those. We're going to play catch up, and we're going to be an incredible investment for the state of Kansas on a go-forward basis. Lastly, because we gave you one page last year, we would like to give you one page on the final page there on our transformation. Those are our goals, which we will report to you next year with the various metrics and measure ourselves. With that, I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Ken. Questions? Senator McGinn.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And you kind of took the lead on tenure, and it's quieted down in the news, but I assume you haven't backed off. It's still just going through the process. Would that be right?
Yes, through the policy that the Board of Regents provided, we did use that policy. We did not approach it as tenure, but we had programs that if we would have looked back in that one chart where we could have gone back 17, 18 years, and as students, the luxury that we have, students vote twice a year for what they want. They get to choose in the fall and again in the spring what they want. We need to do a better job of connecting with that needs and wants, and historical, reduce the various programs as needed. We don't have that luxury. We had to do it all at once. And so it was a program identification, and individuals and/or those people associated with it was secondary. But those were tough decisions.
I think former Senator Ed Berger referred to some of those programs as underwater basket weaving. So, but anyway, I'd be interested in watching how this plays out, just to see if maybe other universities may look at some of that as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to commend you on taking the institution-wide self-assessment. I commend you for doing this, and I look forward to seeing your report in the year to see how we're doing.
Thank you. We will. Appreciate that.
Any other, Senator Alley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The decline in enrollment in our teaching profession, how do we improve that?
That's a great question. Be glad to take it with you offline and have some discussions on that. I mean, it's a head scratcher for us. I know that we have certainly felt that ourselves. A lot of our students, through our asking them, frankly, the teachers, the students go into that profession, are doing it because of passion. Their parents or grandparents or family members were teachers, and it's a calling. But it's something, I think, because of the state has a shortage of this immensely, we need to get all of our heads together and tackle it that way. But
thank you.
Great question.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Ken, thank you for being here today, and thank you for your work. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next, we'll have Dr. Julianne Mazachek, President of Washburn University.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the committee, for the opportunity to be here today and to talk about Washburn University and what we do. I like President Hush and others before me, I will not repeat some of the things that have already been said, but will focus primarily on what we're doing at Washburn. I want to thank you, though, for your support in the past and for the support that you will be giving to us this year to be able to continue the good work that we're doing. And I'd like to start off with explaining a little bit about Washburn. We were founded in 1865. We are, like ESU and other regional institutions, we are a teaching institution primarily. One of the things that's important to note that's different about Washburn than other institutions is that we are and have been since our very beginning an open admission campus, meaning that if you graduate from a high school in the state of Kansas, we have a career pathway for you at Washburn University. And we do not deny admission. That has been true, I want to make sure you know that, for 158 years. And we've stayed true to that, and our board has too. We are coordinated through the Kansas Board of Regents. We do have our independent governing board, the Washburn University Board of Regents. We have approximately 15,000 alumni who work in Shawnee County. 1,000 of them are law alumni. We also have, over the last 10 years, about 3,000 tech alumni who live in our Shawnee County that we serve. In the last U.S. News and World Report, while I do not like to hang my hat on that all the time, we've worked diligently on one aspect, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and we are the highest ranked regional university in the state of Kansas, and we're 14th in the Midwest. And we are committed to student success, helping our students achieve their educational goals and dreams, whatever they might be. We are committed to growing the talent pipeline, the workforce for our community and for this great state of Kansas, and to supporting in an integral way the growth of a thriving economy in Shawnee County and the surrounding region. Washburn University has about 5,500 students on its main campus. We have three campuses, similar to some of the other universities who presented. We have 2 tech campuses, and we also have a main traditional 4-year degree campus. And so we have about 5,500 students on that campus with over 200 programs. I would say that our primary area of interest on our campus is 37% of our students are in health-related programs. And we believe that that's indicative of us being in a regional community with strong health care. One of the things that we are most proud of is that we follow, because so many of our students, we serve a wide array of needs. So many of our students, because of our location, come to Washburn for a number of years, a semester, and then they might transfer to K-State. They might transfer to KU or an Emporia State. And we know that we need to serve that need too. When we survey our students, 97% of our graduates achieve whatever their desired outcome is and what our students are seeking to be able to achieve. We also have a tech campus, about 1,200 students. I'm not going to belabor that because Heather did such a good job talking about technical programs. However, serving Shawnee County, we have about 35 technical certificates, some associate degrees, 95% completion rate. So very important part of the economy in Shawnee County and developing the workforce of the future for our businesses. I would like to talk just briefly about our funding sources because we do look different than the other institutions. We, of course, have tuition and fees that fees are very limited. We have one fee that is $55 a semester. That is all. We also have state appropriations, which we're very grateful for from the state of Kansas. And then we also have local appropriations due to our benefit to our Shawnee County and to this region. We do have dollars that come to help support our budget every year. Now that is different for tech. Tech is funded as the traditional technical schools are funded. I would like to talk with you about open access. I mentioned that at the very beginning. That is probably one of our most important aspects. We've remained very true to making sure that we're serving all students, no matter their background, no matter their socioeconomic background, race, gender, whatever that might be. And half of our students are first generation, and approximately half of our students are Pell eligible. 82% of our students are from Kansas, and 50% of them approximately are from Shawnee County. 75% of all of our graduates remain in Kansas. We're very proud of that. Many of them remain in our local community, which is the hope of our business owners in that community. This is a place where I really wanted to talk about need-based aid because I want to thank you for the Kansas Comprehensive Grant. There was a tremendous increase, as a previous presenter mentioned earlier, that required a one-to-one match, and we've been very grateful for that. And we look forward to the need-based aid that will come in the future and that it will greatly benefit our students and their ability to be successful and to reduce their debt. We also know that there was a governor's recommendation for an additional $20 million of financial assistance for need-based financial assistance for students. We believe that it's possible that Washburn was inadvertently omitted from that, and so we would ask to have consideration that we would also be considered to add $1.5 million to the budget request for the student financial assistance that came forward from the governor. I want to spend probably most of my time talking about student success because that has been what we have been focused on over the last 6 to 7 years. And I will tell you that we started this effort in 16-17, and many of our efforts are nationally recognized. We have been able to When a student comes to a university, any university, you want them to be able to achieve their goals and dreams, but most of all, we want them to leave with something that's valuable, which is usually a degree. So we've been very focused on our graduation rates. And remember, we're open access. Anybody can come to Washburn University. And we, over the last 5 years, have achieved a 50% increase in our 6-year graduation rate. We are now at 54%. We're very, very proud of that. We believe that that is probably what has affected our U.S. News ranking. We will continue to work diligently to improve that. We believe we have a few more percentage points, things we can do that will help us. I want to share with you that we are early adopters of math pathways. You've heard other institutions talk about that. We adopted and implemented math pathways in 2019. We have seen great success. We believe that was one of the primary barriers for our graduation and walking across the stage, and we've been able to be very successful in removing that barrier and seeing success. And then one of the things that we're very committed to also is that working with our students to ensure that they know and have ideas and thoughts and plans for how they're going to finance their education through to graduation. We do have the 5th lowest debt in Midwest public regional universities as a result of those efforts, and we will continue those into the future. In our budget, I just want to share that much of our work over the last 5 years has been funded through a federal grant, and it is slowly working its way through the system, and we will lose that funding. And you will see in our governor's budget this year, which we are very grateful for, was a $437,000 support to continue our good works in student success and even to expand them going forward. And I think that we have shown that we know how to invest those dollars and to make a difference for our students. And so we're very grateful for that investment in our students going forward. As we begin to think about the future and how we best create the workforce and develop our economies in the strongest way that we possibly can, we have been working closely for many, many years with our business partners, and we recognize that we're at the heart of our community for developing that talent pipeline. And we have a long history of doing that and being closely aligned and developing programs that meet their needs and creating ways to tie our students to our businesses in our communities so that they can keep the best and the brightest right there in Topeka and the region. We do have some new avenues, though, that we're following to make sure that we're working to increase the number of students that are pursuing post-secondary education. We have been developing over these last years some innovative K-12 partnerships that allow our students in high school to be able to choose college or to be able to take college courses while they are in high school, and even to graduate with an associate's degree when they walk across the stage with their high school diploma. We also are working in the field with the state. This is one of their initiatives. We are happy to be the 4-year leader in working with corrections, the Department of Corrections, in providing education at the associate's level and at the bachelor's level. We are the only 4-year partner, so we're the only bachelors at this time. And we are graduating our first set of students in the spring. We know, why is this important? Not only does it increase potential, the workforce with potentially new workers that wouldn't otherwise have been qualified, but it also reduces, there is research that shows the number one intervention that you can do to prevent people from returning into correctional facilities is to educate them. And we are very proud and humbled to be able to be a part of that, and the state has provided much of the support for us to be able to make that possible. We plan to continue to do that work. And then we have worked closely on military articulations, especially in the health fields and in the behavioral science fields, and in developing those articulations between their experiences and their training in the military and how it can create credit for their experiences and clearly articulate a pathway to an associate's or a bachelor's degree at the end. And we've been very pleased to be able to be involved with that with the Kansas Board of Regents leadership. And then finally, I would just like to share that we will continue to work closely with our business partners to anticipate their needs and to develop and train the workforce of the future, and to meet those needs through at all of our campuses, through our technical programs and through our traditional university pathways. And we thank you for your support for our students and the programs that we deliver and the work that we do to build the pipeline of talent needed for our community and for this state of Kansas.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you, and thank you for. Just a second. Thanks for being here, and congratulations in your new position.
Thank you, thank you.
So I was looking at the healthcare and the new programs. So are these new this year, or were they started last year? The nurse practitioner in mental health and the bachelor's of health science administration?
They've been started within the last 5 years in direct response to the needs of the community. And we continue to develop those and to tweak those in ways that make the most difference for our students and the employers that they serve.
Thank you.
And Senator McGinn.
So is this certificate for nurse practitioners in mental health, is that different than what somebody else has out there?
So it is we offered this completely online. We serve about 100 students a year in that, and we are represented, I think it's over 40 states. Students take that, and we developed that in direct response to the need for mental health workers in the clinics and a non-traditional pathway to get to mental health, and we've had great success in that. So is it different? I can't answer that completely other than it's completely online, and we have more demand for it than we can fill.
Other questions? Seeing none? Oh, excuse me, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm interested in your corrections. Is that most of that online?
Okay, so that is so interesting. It actually is a combination of online and in person. So our technical college delivers it at the juvenile facility, and that is 100% in person. And we've been doing that for almost a decade. It contracted during COVID, and we are back in full force and expanding that. Students are very successful in that area. And for the adult population, it is online and in person. It does have a unique delivery model just because they're in a correctional facility, and that's what makes it so challenging and hard to find the resources. So it really does have to be a partnership with the state. But we know we are changing lives, and if I could share with you sometime a report and feedback from those students, you would know that those programs are making a difference for generations to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Dr. Mazachek, thank you for being here today and appreciate your good work.
Thank you very much.
Next, we'll have Dan Shipp, President of Pittsburgh State University. Dan, welcome to committee.
Is it best for last? Is that where we're at, right? I love that. Yeah, right, a gorilla is here, live and in person. Mr. Chair, distinguished members, I am Dan Shipp, and I'm grateful to be with you and for you allowing me a little time today to take this opportunity to highlight our mission-driven work that our faculty and staff are doing at Pitt State. What we do, we make life better for students, families, employers, and community partners in Southeast Kansas, the surrounding communities in our state and far beyond. It is a genuine privilege and honor to serve as the 10th president. Big shoes to fill for me and our family. We've moved south where the weather's a little nicer here in Kansas, so we appreciate that. As you might imagine, I've spent my first semester learning about the campus and the region through the voices of literally hundreds, probably thousands at this point, of students, faculty, staff, and community partners. If you haven't experienced it yet, Gorilla Pride is real. Our current students, alumni, we share a common bond that goes far beyond Pittsburgh, Kansas. In fact, as you look around Kansas more closely, you begin to realize that gorillas are not so rare and endangered after all, especially when it comes to leading and building Kansas communities and businesses. Gorilla grads like Dr. Roy Jensen and his teams continue to make us proud by leading the fight to conquer cancer at the University of Kansas Cancer Center. Dr. Jensen, we see you. Other Gorilla grads like Trinity Davis, president and founder of Teachers Like Me, are working day and night to significantly increase the number of Black teachers by removing barriers to entry and providing the support needed to be effective and responsive to the academic and social needs of all students. Dr. Davis, we see you. Also, there are gorillas like the Senate Majority Leader, Mr. Larry Alley, right here, right in this room, that are leading in plain sight. Senator Alley, we see you. And of course, there is also Representative Jake LaTurner, who is leading for Kansas within the United States House of Representatives. Representative LaTurner, we definitely see you as well. Okay, I'm sure you get the point by now. There are thousands of other Gorilla grads leading and serving within the state of Kansas and throughout the world. I told you, gorillas are certainly not endangered. In fact, we're doing just fine. I want to leave time for questions that you may have, and certainly don't want to repeat some of the information that's been shared. I think you have pretty good data to be thinking about our Kansas institutions. So I'll keep my closing remarks brief. It is important for me to share with you at Pittsburgh State University, our faculty and staff are clearly focused on two priorities: keeping the cost of college affordable, and at the same time, helping more and more students achieve their educational goals. We are inspired to set a very high bar for supporting all students to be successful and graduate into chosen Kansas careers. As someone who grew up with a learning disability, I identify as dyslexic to this day, I can tell you there is no more important work than implementing student success strategies throughout the campus that will meet students where they're at today and where they'll be tomorrow. It's important for all of our students to be successful. Whether as a returning veteran, a student, first-generation student, student from rural or urban community, I can assure you that Pitt State is up to the challenge of educating and preparing the Kansas workforce of tomorrow. While graduating more students is a critical step in growing tomorrow's talent and leadership pipeline in Kansas, we also realize it is imperative for us to be successful in our research collaborations with other state institutions and corporations. The continued growth of our research enterprise at Pitt State is essential to supporting statewide economic goals. You'll find that Pitt State is more than up to this challenge as well. For example, we have nationally and internationally recognized faculty that are currently leading advances in plastics and polymers research. This emphasis on material science perfectly positions Pitt State to support research centers at other institutions across the state and partner with both large and small manufacturers throughout the state and region looking for an edge in producing next generation materials for use in products ranging from healthcare instrumentation to nanochip technology. On behalf of Pitt State, I would ask that you support our $4 million budget request, which is currently in Governor Kelly's proposed budget. This will help us build a manufacturing prove-out facility adjacent to our established Material Science Research Center. This budget support is critical to matching the federal funds we recently secured through the excellent leadership of both Senator Moran and Representative LaTurner. We have also identified additional funding opportunities that you have before you that would advance STEM education and regional micropolitan development. They are identified for your review. Chair Billinger and distinguished members, thank you again for all that you do for us, to strengthen us, to hold us accountable, and to drive Kansas forward. I have a piece of good news. I think since President Linton mentioned this, I should mention this as well, that we were a recipient of one of the challenge grants, the 3-to-1 match, which was really important to us. We call it Guerrilla Rising. It's moving our Kels College of Business, which is an 100-year-old building, to downtown Pittsburgh, Kansas. So if you think of our investment in Block 22, for those of you that have been to the area, this will be an addition to that, allowing our students to learn and live right in downtown Pittsburgh. Now that may sound like that's a long way from a main campus, but it's about 3/4 of a mile. So it's an expansion. That $12.5 million is a historic grant for campus. So that will mean that we add public and private partnership to getting this project done in 3 years. And that's important for the students in the region. Be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Dan. Questions? Senator Fagg.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. A couple easy ones. What is the percentage of total funding comes from state appropriations at Pittsburgh State?
I believe we're at
50%.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what is the percentage of out-of-state students? I know you're right next to the border.
It's still a small percentage for us.
It is? Okay, mostly Kansas?
Yeah, so we're in the high 80s of in-state, but we talked about Arkansas earlier. That's not good. We have to be competitive in all these states in our 4-region area.
And one final question.
Sure.
How much was the federal funding you was talking about? You was talking about you got federal, how much was?
Yeah, $4 million is coming to us, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Seeing none, thank you, Dan. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Next, we will have Jim Gannett, President of the Kansas Association of Technical Colleges on WebEx. Jim, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm actually president of Manhattan Tech, and I'm the leader this year for the Kansas Tech College Presidents Group. Thanks for allowing me to do it by WebEx. Things are a little crazy in Manhattan right now with fundraising and other things for us. I'll be brief because I know you'd like to have other things to do. You have my testimony. I'm going to hit a few high points. The tech colleges for the last 5 years have overall had an increase in enrollment, both with headcount and full-time equivalency. We've made great strides with many of the high schools we serve, with Excel and CTE in particular. We've had several abilities to reach out and do things through adult ed, including working with refugees from other countries who come to our communities. Here at Manhattan alone, we had almost 50 sign up for ESL classes at the start of January. Through the adult ed programs that many of the tech colleges, community colleges have, we're often able to retain 30 to 40% of those people into our colleges for more training and into the local workforce. Then you take a look at the enrollments in Excel and CTE, which just keep increasing, and we're getting more and more high school students an early start into early college. On page 2, you'll see we have a very high percentage of graduates who stay in Kansas. It stays in between the 75 and 80% range. In my particular institution, 86% of my graduates stay in our region for at least 2 years. So overall, the Kansas Tech colleges enroll about 97% of our students as Kansans, and around 80% stay in the area for at least 2 years. The follow-up data kind of weakens after that. On page 3, you will see that our students make good wages. We like to say that we change people's lives. Many of our students go into healthcare, but we've seen increases in other areas, including construction, science and technology. So overall, our students are doing a great job meeting the needs as entry-level employees with our area employers. The other good thing with tech ed, both with the tech colleges, community colleges, the students are often able to earn an industry-recognized credential or state licensure, which validates that we taught the students correctly. Again, in my particular case, We graduate around 400 students a year, but they combined, they earn over 1,000 industry credentials or licensures, whether it's from CNA for nursing or automotive service or in carpentry, et cetera. So that really validates the investment you make with us. On page 4, kind of an interesting thing at the top I wanted to highlight. There's an annual survey called the Purpose of Education Index. And it's interesting how the priorities have changed. In 2019, Americans ranked the purpose of K-12 education to prepare students for college or university as the 10th highest priority. The most recent results late last year, that dropped to 47th out of 57 priority options. In 2019, preparing students for a career was the 27th priority in the survey. In 2022, it was number 6. And so I think many of the students, many young people who figured out tech ed, whether it's through the community college or tech college, is a great place to start, get a good skill, get a good job, not have student debt. But I think one of the missing things that's not reflected in a lot of the data is after so many years of work, the employers are supporting these students going further education and stay in the workforce. If you've had the chance to come through Manhattan the last year and a half and you've seen the renovations at St. Isidore's Catholic Church done by the K-State campus, the supervisor for that project from BHS Construction was one of our Manhattan Tech Construction Tech graduates. So you see the impact of what we do everywhere. I want to go off the testimony for just a couple of minutes to wrap things up. The tech colleges' primary income through state appropriations amounts to about $25 million a year. For that, you're getting almost $500 million a year in economic impact. Total state appropriations for public higher education of that total amount, the tech colleges get about 3%, but we enroll about 25% of the students statewide in tech ed. When we talk about completion, we all have very good retention rates, but 4 of the 7 tech colleges in the state are in the top 25 in the nation for best graduation rates. North Central Tech, Northwestern Tech, Flint Hills Tech, and Salina Tech are in the top 25 in the nation for graduation. Manhattan Tech was ranked 4th in the nation this past year by Wallet Hub, a national financial services company, out of almost 700 two-year colleges as being the best student in the nation. Our graduation rates overall are the highest of any public education sector, post-secondary education sector in the state. Our enrollment trends over the last 5 years have been solid with full-time equivalency impact of almost 9%, headcount growth of about 23%. Our students owe the least when they graduate from college. They're making very good money. And again, almost 80% of our graduates stay in the state. As Heather mentioned, we are working with the community colleges on some collaborative approaches we want concerning more resources so we can have more of an impact. The last thing I'll point out is that 2 of the major 3 economic development projects of the state in the last year are in tech college service areas. Scorpion, that Dr. Litton mentioned earlier here in Manhattan. The biomanufacturing expansion, almost 53% of their workers will come through Manhattan Tech, but we haven't received any special funding for that. And then Integra in Wichita with Wichita Tech with semiconductor expansion. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions and make sure that you get a chance to go get some lunch.
Thank you, Jim. Questions? Senator McGinn.
Yes, I was just curious, what of your pie chart, what percent is for your revenue is state money?
It varies by institution. Overall, I think it's right around 40 to 45%. None of the tech colleges have taxing authority, so none of us get any local tax levies. In my particular case, the state appropriations make up about 29% of my budget. The rest comes from tuition and fees.
Thank you. That was my second question, was whether you guys could do taxing authority. And I'm looking at Heather, but community colleges can. Is that correct? Okay, so tech colleges cannot. All right, thank you.
The 19 community colleges get a little over $250 million a year in local taxes that we aren't allowed to have.
Other questions? Oh, Senator Petty.
I just have to add to that because we assess our local taxpayers to pay on a property a tax on that. So as you know that already.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Jim, thank you for being here today, and thank you for your work. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Committee, that is all of the, I guess just say this is the end of the hearing. This is, yeah, this is all the testimony for today, and with that, we are adjourned.